Hello, everyone. I see we still have some people joining the room, so we want to welcome those of you who are here. And like we normally do, we're going to give it just a couple minutes. Some people are still trying to get into the room, but we want to say hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this final session in our Lunch Bite series. We're really excited about this one. I'm particularly excited about this session because, as you can see, I have new faces with me today. Let's just jump in. For those of you who are not familiar with Chartwell Agency, I know many of you who've been joining us. Hi, Tanya from Rock Valley Credit Union. You know Chartwell Agency. We are an integrated marketing and public relations agency. We have 3 areas of expertise: healthcare, financial, and education, but we do have a lot of clients from outside of those areas too. So in just a second, we're going to be asking where you're from. Hi, Heather. Welcome. So let's jump in. Just a few quick housekeeping notes. For those of you who've watched our other webinars, this one is different. This one is all about you and your questions. You have sent us some questions, which we're going to address in the slide deck, but we're going to be taking questions from you in real time too. So use that chat box. We are watching. We are answering your questions. We're going to answer as many as we can. If we don't get to your question, we'll follow up with you. So we'll make sure you get an answer one way or the other. Again, like our other webinars, a recording will be available, so you won't miss a minute of the fun. Before we get too far, though, I want to share with you the 2 lovely ladies who joined me on today's call. I have Carly Smith, who is Vice President with Chartwell Agency. She is also our healthcare division lead. So all of my friends from our healthcare field, all of you, first of all, thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing, but Carly's going to answer some questions related to healthcare. And then we have lovely Miss Catherine Povolitis. She is another vice president with Chartwell Agency, and she is the division lead for our financial and our education division. So those of you from those areas will probably know Catherine. Want to say hi to Brenda from Clay County Hospital. Thanks for joining us, Brenda. Hope you're doing well. So let's keep this going. Let's keep building a community. Let us know that you're here. Let us know that you're watching. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we answer all of your questions. So real quick before we get started, I want to start a poll just to get a sense of who's on the line with us today. So real quick, let us know, where are you calling from? Are you with a healthcare institution, a financial institution? Are you with a school or an educational institution or a nonprofit? We know we've had a lot of our nonprofit friends on these webinars. Or do you fall into that really great other category? So just take a couple seconds. Let us know where you're listening from, so we can make sure to answer your questions the best we can. See some answers coming in. Just a few more seconds. Looks like a pretty even split right now. Interesting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Hopefully you can all see that. So it looks like we're pretty split, but we have some of our healthcare, our financial, our nonprofit. So just got a hello from Colin from Empyrean. So he's pretty close to our offices. Hi, Colin. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we had questions that you all submitted. We're going to try to tackle a lot of those. They kind of fell into some categories, so we've presented them in those categories for you, but we're going to be responsive and flexible, just jump around as we need. The first category we saw there was a lot of interest in is understanding customer and customer needs. So some of the questions that were submitted to us, we had a question that said, will there be a demand for our service? And if so, at what level? So I'm going to hand this off to one of the ladies, but before I do, I want to remind you that we tackled this topic in one of our other webinars about being able to look at customer behavior and predict where the demand is. So I highly recommend going back to webinar number 2, understanding your customers in a recession. There'll be some questions that help prompt you and help you think about what is the demand for our service. But do either one of you ladies want to jump in on this one and how they can be predicting demand?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Again, Carly Smith. And, that's the $1 million question that we're all being asked right now. And really the best piece of advice that I can give to you all is to look back at webinar 2, but really to understand what your customers are wanting and needing from you right now. And, I know, Emily, you've got some great information about having conversations with your customers and continuing to build those relationships to understand what they want. But the other thing that I would recommend is really educating yourself. So whether you're participating in industry webinars or even just subscribing to some of the great industry news feeds that there are out there, I subscribe to a lot of healthcare ones, and I'm getting a lot of great information about customer behaviors and habits that are starting to form. And let me just give you an example. I received an email the other day from a healthcare news feed that talked about different specialty, non-COVID related medical needs and what specialty type healthcare adults were wanting at this time. And it was very interesting because a lot of adults were saying that they're not going to seek out dental, or they're not going to seek out maybe mental health. And so just looking at some of those behaviors and habits and really understanding what's happening. There's a lot of great people out there doing research and surveys and studies. The other thing that I saw the other day was that telehealth increased by 50% in March. And along with that, 1 in 8 individuals have used some sort of online service in the last month. So just knowing that and keeping yourself up to speed will really help you determine the strategies that you should look at moving forward.
Yeah, I really.
Emily, anything to add?
No, I think you're right on. And market research, now is not the time to cut our marketing research budgets, right? Because we don't have something we can learn from. So we are all doing the best to predict what demand is today, but what it'll be tomorrow as well. Catherine, I know that communication is a big need for your financial clients right now. We had a question about what should we be communicating to our customers, and in the case of credit unions, some of our members, what will help them feel more comfortable as we create a plan to open back up? That's another really important question.
So absolutely. I mean, finances are never going to go out of style. Those services are always going to there's always going to be a demand for those services. And as you are all well aware right now, we've had to, we've had some amazing marketing strategies in place, starting at the beginning of the year, but we've had to pivot, right, to respond to this pandemic. So, the current needs that your customers are needing right now, that's going to change down the line, obviously. So currently right now, I think we have a really good opportunity from a digital standpoint. We've had to adopt the digital strategy. Run straight through into it and no turning back. That's not going to end. I think, to make sure your customers are comfortable moving forward, transitioning back into visiting your branches, is making sure you're communicating right now the things that you're doing to prepare, you're following CDC guidelines, you're looking forward to actually greeting your customers face to face. Utilize your social media channels and your email marketing and even text messaging to people. I think there's, that's going to be a huge opportunity right now. The things that you're doing right now are going to set the stage for success moving forward. Our, digital landscape is not going to change. I think this is our platform right now. We're jumping off that diving board and we're going to keep swimming into that digital world. So keep that strong now, because the efforts you're putting into that right now for any industry is going to pay off big time. In our future normal world, right? So, but I think you need to be aware of, when we start easing our way back into our quote unquote normal world again, there is going to be a mix of kind of your pre-COVID marketing of services and the digital. So I think there's going to be making sure that you're doing a little bit more of a blend initially from that standpoint. But like I said, I think people are going to pivot slowly back into the digital service lines with most organizations, just because of the convenience factor, right? They can have self-service anytime they want.
Right. And, for our healthcare and our financial clients, we know that right now our members, our customers, our patients, they're nervous and they're stressed out. So what do they want to hear from us right now? They want to hear that you're stable. They want to hear that you will be there, that you're here to support them. They want those re-encouraging messages. And I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. And we also know how stressful it is even to go to the grocery store. Like, you can't use the same doors and you got to do things differently. And that creates a lot of anxiety. So thinking about what can we be telling our our members, our customers, our patients now, so that when they are ready to come back to our facilities, they know what to expect, take some of the anxiety out of the process. Again, everybody send us questions in the chat. We are watching for your chat. We're going to answer the questions we received in advance. And if there's anything that we need to add, we'll jump in there. So we as a team kind of thought through, this is part of your reimagining. So we want to pose these questions back to you as you sit down with your teams and you think about how do we put together a go forward plan that sets us up for success. Here are questions we think that you should pose back to your team. One, understand who are your most valuable customers. There's some helpful insight in one of the former webinars about deciding who is a valuable customer, who are the customers we want to make sure that we keep in our pipeline. Thinking, what do they think? What do they feel? What do they need? How do I meet that need in a post-COVID environment? Like Catherine spoke to, some of these behaviors are going to stick. So which ones are going to stick and how do we ramp up our abilities in those areas? And then I think to Carly's point about doing the research, doing the homework, staying on top of it, learning the lessons today that we can apply to the relationships tomorrow. So those are questions that we say should be a part of your reimagining strategy as it relates to understanding your customers. So let's jump into our next category. We had some questions about just industries in general and what we can expect to see. So those questions. Carly, I think you are teed up for this one because it's specifically for our healthcare, and you mentioned telehealth earlier. We had a question about how should we be promoting and improving our telehealth services? What advice can you throw out?
Sure. Well, as you all know, telehealth is not a new concept, but the pandemic certainly it required some organizations to either fast track an implementation, or organizations who were maybe already offering it, maybe just promote it a little bit more and make sure that your patients and consumers know that you offer it. So a couple things here. The first is, as far as promotion is concerned, you can promote those services the exact same way you promote your other services. So whether your target audience was, with social media or digital health, or, you used a lot of PR or content development to promote those services, you can certainly do that to promote your telehealth services. If you have had to cut budget because of the pandemic, you can certainly look at more cost-effective measures such as social media or email marketing. And so email marketing those services to your current list. If you still have a little bit of budget to spend, going back to what Catherine talked about with digital, that is really what I would recommend that you spend your marketing dollars on for telehealth, because it is so targeted and you can really target that audience and ensure that you're getting a good ROI. And then really, really important is making sure that you are investing in training and production for these services. So, train your physicians and your staff on your telehealth services and make sure that your patients are receiving the best possible communications and experience that is possible. Remember, marketing is not just advertising. Don't forget about creating those experiences that can then turn into referrals for your organization.
Yeah, great point too about making sure we train our teams to handle this as well as our patients. We did have a question that came in that talked about this moment for healthcare providers, being recognized as the healthcare heroes and really being on the front lines. But, as hospitals look at the revenue mix, it is important that eventually we get some of those other service lines. So how do we balance that idea of, serving this immediate need and being the healthcare heroes while also addressing some of the more profitable service centers? And I think we walk this line every day with our healthcare clients, right? Like there's the stuff that feels very important, but then there's also the revenue centers that fund the rest of the operations of the hospital. And I think the most important thing is to have a message that we're here for the whole health, and your whole health involves all of those areas. You can certainly promote areas like dermatology and ortho and plastics and other areas that feel non-essential, but they're part of our whole health and they're part of the big picture. So serving the entire healthcare needs of our community. And that still is a part of what we expect and what we need from our healthcare providers. Carly, was there anything else you wanted to add there?
No, I think that was good, but I would just say, there's certainly still opportunities to honor those heroes, and, think about your social media posting and your blogs and just any PR opportunities that you can really balance out those promotions of things such as, like Emily mentioned, dermatology, plastics, that sort of thing. And then using some of those other channels to really promote those heroes and what's going on the front lines.
Right. So we had a question that is, I think, more for you, Catherine, and it was about mobile adoption and people who have not been really excited about using mobile technology for financial services. And now they've been, I think, to use your analogy, they've been thrown into the deep end. What advice would you give about supporting those customers?
So I love this question. I love generational marketing. And as you can all imagine, the millennials, the Gen Xers, transitioned flawlessly. I think most of them, at least, into this pandemic, as far as it relates to, our digital marketing and mobile technology, very comfortable with it. But there is that older generation that doesn't have that sense of comfort and the experience as it relates to mobile devices and technology. So, I think there's a couple of really strong options that are out there for banks and credit unions and financial institutions to be doing right now. And that really is combining a mix of traditional and digital marketing. So, I think from people are still getting their mail, I think as far as doing some type of targeted mailing to target the older demographic in your members and your customers, providing them step-by-step instructions on how to access this mobile technology so they can still get the attention that they need, and they can get to your services, very easily. But always make sure that you're providing a personal point of contact for that individual. The older generation is very comfortable, talking on the phone, picking up the phone and asking questions. So just make sure that you have access for those individuals to get the help that they need when they need it, and to make sure that your staff is prepared to answer those questions and they know the step-by-step instructions to guide them through the process. But I think, above and beyond that, we do have some pretty technologically savvy individuals out there that utilize email, I would say, kind of as their primary go-to as far as, our digital advertising would go. So I would invest in, if you could do a video tutorial, a step-by-step instruction that shows somebody from your branch, your location, so they have that familiar face to look at, and it shows them very easy step-by-step instructions. I think adopting, the digital adoption and going back to some of your more traditional marketing, I think can be a very effective way to target those that have been very reluctant to use your mobile services.
Yeah, it's funny. You think of they're reluctant to take on these new behaviors, and then we're going to email them a video tutorial. So your point about let's communicate with them in the way that makes the most sense. Let's meet them halfway, and then also providing that personal touch, which is so important to some of our community banks and our credit unions. That personal relationship. So. Okay, so questions we think you should be posing to your team and thinking about as you reimagine your own future and as it relates to the industry. Use those industry resources. We have them. We're members of these associations. There's a lot of great research being done. I think Carly spoke to that. A lot of people are putting time and attention, so leverage that. What can you learn from your industry associations, from other resources to help you predict and plan? Getting to that question of where's my industry going first before I think about my business specifically. Look at your competitive landscape. In this moment, this will cause a shakeout. People will fall and people will soar. So your competitive landscape is going to change. So you should be paying attention to how does that affect you? If we have competitors who have stopped advertising, can we purchase some of that market share at a lower rate? Or if we see an up-and-comer who's introducing something new, what does that mean for us? So really paying attention. This does cause a shift. You do need to keep your eye on the ball here. And then let's all pull out our magic 8 balls and say, what does the industry look like in 6 months or 1 year? You will be rewarded for embracing that entrepreneurial spirit by taking the risk, looking at what's coming and jumping in. I think now is a moment where that the ability to do that and the ability to innovate through will certainly be rewarded. So moving right along, again, I just want to encourage you, we are following this chat. We are answering questions as they pop up. So feel free to use that. let's shift to talk about your business specifically. So we've talked about customers, we've talked about the industry in a more global, this kind of got down into more specific questions about individual organizations or individual businesses. So some of the questions we got this one right off the bat, didn't we? When should I return to normal promotion? I think the first questions we got, or should I stop completely? And then the question was, when do I return to normal? So who wants to take this one first?
I will go ahead and jump on this. This, I think, I know Carly already mentioned the $1 million question. I think we have lots of $1 million questions right now, and this is another one of them. So I actually just had a call with one of my clients this week, and we're talking about, I do a lot of PR for them, and this is a financial institution, and at this point in time, we have to be very reactive to the marketplace. Everything is very centered around COVID-19, coronavirus. And so a lot of what we are doing and pitching and working with the media is how can we provide our media with expert people to provide, to give helpful tips for people during this pandemic. So we actually talked about what are things we can be doing right now, not so to continue to be reactive, right? Whether it's PR or marketing, but also to make sure we're looking 6, 12, 18 months down the road, going back to that amazing marketing plan that you probably had ready to go in place at the beginning of January. Go revisit that. Look to see what's coming up. Find, what is relevant to you. If it doesn't have anything to do with this current pandemic, I can guarantee you there's a way that you can have it relate to, the current situation and when it will be 3 months down the road. So what we're gaining right now is the ability to be effectively pivoting to the marketplace and what's happening out there. And I think we need to continue to do that moving forward. However, with that being said, utilize your current marketing plan, the one that you had created pre-COVID, identify opportunities down the road that you can be prepared to market and to push out to the media, but know that you might have to pivot. You have a plan in place. I want to give a good example of something that you might be able to take advantage of, especially as it relates to a bank or another financial institution, is, you could leverage June or July as mid-year financial checkup, right? That's something you can plan in advance for, but kind of put a little bit of a twist on it as far as people right now are struggling financially. Mid-year financial checkup is a great opportunity to be, becoming the expert on what you can offer to help those people during this time of transition to recover, right? People are in this kind of almost getting to this recovery mode. So I think planning now for things 2, 3, 4 months down the road, and just making sure that you have your talking points, you have service lines that are, available to help people get through this recovery period and transition back into our new normal. So I think, returning to the new normal is going to be fluid. And I think we just need to continue to be able to pivot as, things change throughout, the weeks and months ahead.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that we won't ever return to a pre-COVID world, but what we can do is we can layer some of those things that worked well for us and kind of view them through our new lens, and then that will become kind of our new normal. I know that's a term a lot of people are using, and I hate to throw out things like unprecedented and new normal, but it sounds like that's really what you're saying is some of the plans that you worked before, you just look at them through a new lens, and that becomes how you move forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, Carly, I'm going to ask you this question because I know you've gotten a lot from your healthcare clients about their ad buys and what to do with those. So what advice can you give the person who asked this question? How should I restart my ad buys and how do I prioritize those dollars?
Sure. Absolutely. So, we have had several clients come to us and ask about ad buys, and we are at the point now where I would definitely start relooking at your ad buys if you had to pause them to kind of determine what you might, what your strategy might be moving forward, especially based on some of that research that you're doing and education that you're grabbing around your customer behavior. So I would start looking at those ad buys right now. I can tell you that a lot of the media organizations are offering a lot of great deals. We had a client who got a print ad and a bunch of digital impressions for almost next to nothing, just because they need to fill that space right now. So I would definitely start looking at what's out there and how you can maximize your dollar. Again, think about digital advertising so that you can be really, really targeted and make sure that you're getting those reports to see your ROI. This is also a great time. We have a lot of clients come to us and admittedly say, you know what, we haven't updated our ad buy in 3 years. We just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And this is a great time to really look at your ad buy. Sit down, put it all out on the table, chart out where you're spending your dollars and what mediums you're using, and determine whether or not it's actually working for you, and really reevaluate how you're using your ad buy. There's no better time than now.
It's a great point that so many of us kind of get to those habits. And the one good thing that comes out of this is we're forced to really look critically, and maybe some really great insight can come as a result. Another question that we had was more for, I think, our nonprofit friends who've been listening. And both of you have really strong backgrounds in nonprofit administration and nonprofit fundraising specifically. So this question was about social fundraising events, but then we also had a question from a nonprofit about, how do we ask people for money right now when it feels like many people are experiencing hard times?
Well, first of all, hi, Heather. Yes, as Emily mentioned, Catherine and I both do have experience in the nonprofit area. And I'm going to answer Heather's question first, and then I'm going to jump into the social fundraising question as well. But as far as really balancing, the ask for donations, which you still need to do, and, the communication, I would just say anybody that's worked in the nonprofit field knows that relationships are king. And just continue to build those relationships with your donors. And much like we said, research your customers, have those conversations with your donors. Continuously make phone calls and reach out to them via email just to see how they're doing and see what they're hearing in the marketplace. And you'll most likely be able to pull out in those conversations, where they're at as far as giving donations is concerned, especially some of your bigger corporate donors and that sort of thing. I do really feel for nonprofits right now because it's going to be very difficult, but you're going to have to get really creative. And we have a little bit more guidance, at least in Illinois. I know that there's some individuals on the call from other states as well, but we have a little bit of guidance on, when things may open back up and how many people can gather at one time. I know nothing is concrete, but I would just really keep an eye on that and think about ways that you can be creative with your fundraising. So, you might need to do smaller and more frequent events. If you had a big gala planned, perhaps you do a bunch of smaller events that can kind of feed up into a larger pool. The other thing that I recommend is talk to your volunteers. Your volunteers have the best ideas, and we all know sometimes that they don't have the greatest ideas as well, but set up a phone call and sit down with your do a Zoom call with your volunteers and do kind of a pie in the sky, no idea is a bad idea type meeting, and throw all of that ideas out on the table, and then kind of scale back and see which ones are going to be feasible for your organization. One more thing I want to say, and then I want to let Catherine talk because I know you've got a lot of ideas too, is don't forget about grants. I know that sometimes grants just get forgotten about because there's so much work, but there are a lot of organizations right now that are offering grants to healthcare organizations. And so I know the pool is a little bit bigger right now to get that money. But I know sometimes we tend to forget about those opportunities.
Catherine, did you have anything you wanted to add real quick before we jump to the next topic?
I do, yeah. So I would just recommend, for those of you that have planned outdoor social events, you always have a plan B, right? What's going to be your indoor location if it's, if it rains? What are you going to do? So I'm recommending right now that organizations develop kind of a distance first approach. And it's similar to having that indoor plan, backup plan, that plan B. What are things that, say you have, a breakfast fundraising event every year. If you cannot do that this year, what are some things, what is a plan B option that you've had in the past that you perhaps could switch gears, actually might create some fresh ideas or fresh event for your donors out there, might spark some, get some more energy and spark some more interest in your organization by creating something different. So that's going to be a good thing for you. But just make sure that you have that distance first approach. Where can it be brought online virtually? A virtual happy hour, for instance, might be a really good thing to do moving forward.
And some of the best ideas I have not required getting together. I mean, look at the Ice Bucket Challenge and some of those other things. So this is when creativity really pays off and our entrepreneurial spirit pays dividends. Carly did lose the signal. She is coming back into the room, so just sit tight for her. But in the meantime, let's jump to here's some questions that we want to make sure that you are thinking about as they relate to your business. One, where are we positioned to thrive? So in webinar number 2, we talked about understanding where you are in the mix of your customers or your members or your patients' lives, and find out where you're green. Where are you green? Where are you yellow? Where are you red? Let's invest in green and let's support yellow, and let's stop investing in the red. Are there new revenue streams? So this goes to the predicting and looking forward and saying, where do I need to be in 6 months? Thinking with your team. Hi, Carly, welcome back. What's the most valuable win that we could have? If there's one thing that would really make us feel good going into the future, what's that win? And then let's start talking about the obstacles and the roadblocks or the tactics to get there. And then to Catherine's point, she teed it up perfectly. What's that plan B? Because none of us have all the answers, and there's a lot of million-dollar questions, right? So what's your plan B? Always thinking through if that doesn't work. I know we are at 30 minutes, but I want to go to this next section because we did have a couple questions about managing a team. I hope you all can stick with us. Continue to ask questions. We're going to wrap it up as quickly as we can. So one of the questions we had was, how can I manage a team remotely? And so we have some pretty good insight on that because we've been working remotely for a long time. It's part of who we are. So do one of you want to speak about working remotely?
Yeah, I'm happy to now that I'm back. So I think the biggest advice that I can give is, in order to effectively manage a team remotely, you really need to understand the challenges that might come up in managing a team remotely. So things like communication breakdowns and technology and distractions. Some of you may have heard the siding guys out there banging on the side of my house during this. But if you can understand what some of those challenges are, you can work really hard to alleviate, challenges that will come up because of them. So, the first thing I would recommend is make sure that your team has the appropriate tools and technology to work remotely. I mean, obviously that is the number one, thing that you will need. The second thing around communication breakdown is really just making sure that you are making a conscious effort to set up communication with your team. So whether that is a daily check-in for 15 minutes or a meeting that's at the same time every day, every week, and then just really making sure that the expectations are clear on what working remotely means. And that's going to be different for every organization and every job function, but you really need to make sure you set those expectations of what's expected of them. And then finally, just really knowing that there are going to be distractions and understanding and giving people grace, because it's a difficult time right now, especially if you have small kids walking around, and give people some opportunity to kind of take a break and relax. And I know Catherine's going to talk a little bit about feeling supported and motivated, so I won't go into too much detail there. But again, just understanding the challenges that can come up will definitely help you manage your team better.
Yeah. And I think that leads really well into the next question, which was, how do I help my team feel supported and motivated? I'm used to being able to walk up to them at their desk and have a conversation. I can't do that anymore. Catherine, what advice would you give to help leaders support their teams?
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to treat this a little bit like a marketing plan. I know this sounds kind of silly, but this is something that we have to work extra hard at right now. And that's making sure that we're communicating to one another. I know there's times when I can get heads down in my work and realize I haven't talked to somebody in like 6 hours. That's not right. So we need to make sure that we're being very intentional about connecting with one another on a daily basis. So what I suggest, aside from taking 10 minutes, 15 minutes out of your day just to connect with people one-on-one, pick up the phone, do a video, Zoom, Skype, send an email. Make sure you're taking time every day to connect with individuals on your team. But also, I would suggest putting down maybe even like a weekly plan or a 4-week plan that gives you some tactics to work on that might be a little bit bigger than just reaching out. In that plan, you can include, when you want to schedule coffee chats with one-on-one meetings with your staff where you're not talking work at all. It's an opportunity just to see how they're doing. so that, and let them know that you're supporting them, excuse me, through this process. You can include virtual happy hours as kind of a social thing to do with your team members. So they, sometimes adding a little bit of fun can help motivate your employees, right? Can get them to do a little bit more and be excited about some of the things going on right now. And so I would just suggest, creating that plan and actually implementing the plan. If you need help, find some people on your team that might be good to develop a fun committee. We actually have a fun committee on staff that works to plan some of these small things. Especially right now, we're going to have to work extra hard to ensure that we're, developing some fun things for everybody, because work hard, play hard, right? And we can get some big results for our customers and our clients.
Yeah, and I think what's really important is we talked in webinar 4 about showing people the love and different ways to show people the love, and that can apply to your teams too. So you can kind of figure out, I think to your point, Carly, figure out where they need to be, what they need help with, what tools they need. Let's meet that need, but then let's also, Catherine, to your point, remember that they're people and they have needs beyond that. And I think there's something very powerful when a team leader or your organization recognizes that you have a need and does some little thing to say, we see you, we hear you, here's how I can help. So whether that's sending an activity kit for your kids or just saying, hey, let's have a no agenda meeting where we can all just connect again. It's really meeting their needs. Last question, and this is our last question, I believe, in the series, but we want to talk about it, is staff has been reduced or budgets have been cut. And I don't know when and if they're coming back. How in the heck am I going to get everything done that's expected of me or expected of my department when I'm working with so much less? And I'll start this one by reminding everybody that we have a webinar on doing more with less, and it kind of walks you through some steps you can take to make those decisions. And it may mean, raising your hand and asking for help. And using somebody like Chartwell or other partners to jump in to fill an immediate need in the short term. And it also walks you through how to scale expectations among your leadership team. If your department does not have the same capacity, it's important for you to lead those conversations and say, if we don't have this capacity, where would you like us to focus our attentions just to align everybody? I think that's a really important thing to remember. That we all need to be rowing in the same direction. And also it's important to remember there are people who can help you. So don't be shy about raising your hand and saying, I need some quick help. Ladies, do either one of you have something else you want to add to that?
Sure. I just have a quick tidbit. I think now is a really good time to look at what your current expectations are. Are they being met? Are those expectations being met? And if they're not, are they worth letting those expectations go, revising those expectations, depending upon what you decide to do with those expectations can determine how you should proceed with that, right? So you need to be working smarter, not harder. We've been called in to help with clients during this pandemic to help redirect their marketing. Obviously reframe their messaging and their digital advertising has been huge right now. And people with smaller teams don't have the capacity to be doing it internally. So we've been able to provide some really great help with that. So I really, really encourage you to look at what your current expectations are. If you're maintaining, expecting a certain output with your staff that's high, that's not sustainable, that's not good for anybody, that can, cause burnout. So really drill down into those expectations, eliminate the ones that aren't relevant right now. You can always bring those back when times change and they become relevant again. But I think you need to make sure that you have your team front and center and build what your priorities are around the capacity. And if you need help, ask for help.
Yeah, great point. So the questions we encourage you to ask your teams as it goes along with this managing a team in this kind of new environment we're all in, ask yourself, how can I keep my team happy, productive, and engaged? And ask your team, what do you need to stay happy, productive, and engaged? They want to be a part of the process and they want to be part of the solution. How should I involve my team in communicating about our future and planning for our future? People's investment and engagement goes through the roof when they're asked their opinion. And believe me, your team has a lot of insight that you'll benefit from. What resources are working well? Which ones aren't? I think we're all learning a lot about the resources that are available, and we're forming opinions about what's going to work for us going forward. So ditch the ones that aren't working for you, and let's invest a little bit more heavily. We talked about telehealth and production quality and telehealth. Let's invest in the resources that we need. And then in general, what have we learned from COVID-19 and how can we use those lessons? I think there were people who said, remote work can never work for our organization. And I think they're being faced with some tough questions. And so what lessons can we learn from that? And how do we make this better and plan for what may come down the pipe in the future? So I'm looking at the chat. I think we've tackled all of the questions that have come in so far. And we know that we went a little long. Thank those of you who were able to stick with us and hang in there. I hope you were able to get some great advice. I will just open it up to Catherine or Carly for some final thoughts. But I want to thank you all for being a part of this journey, these 5 webinars. I hope they've added value for you.
And I would just say, keep doing a great job, everybody. And, we're all doing the best we can. And we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today.
Thank you so much, everybody. Stay healthy and well.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us.